Hey y'all! Well, we're here for some subjective speaker reviews. And got a lineup here of some different speakers I've been playing with. Two of these I built on the channel as DIY kits. These are some other speakers I use at different places in my house. And I'm just going to kind of compare them to each other and let you know what I think of all of them, especially how they hit for their price point. None of these are real expensive speakers. Starting down here, we got the R51M, which I think I paid $150 for the pair of them. I know it wasn't over 200. GR Research. These are some speakers Danny designed and had for sale on his site. The desktop minis, I think they call them. And he spoke super highly of them, talking about how great they sounded, especially for their size. You can see they're a little smaller than the clips, but they're kind of in the same family. These were, I think, $225 for the kit, and so they were more expensive than these clipses were. But I thought, these got Danny's blessing, so I want to hear what these sound like. And it was my first DIY speakers too. Plus, I think they look really cool, especially with this kind of rounded cube finish I did with the textured black paint, and like I said, all the edges rounded off. I thought it turned out to be a really nice looking little speaker. Next we have the Swan DIY 2.2 two-way speaker. Got a bass port. Yeah, this one's got a round bass port. This one's got a round bass port. This is a sealed cabinet, and then this is the let me get the dust off of it. And this is the RP600M ones, the original ones, that we just did a capacitor upgrade on the channel, and I'll get into what that sounds like. My setup at home is pretty unique. I've got a fairly small listening room. My house is only 1,400 square feet, and it's 3 levels, and so, or it's a split level, and so the listening room just isn't really very big. It's kind of what the living room would be, and I have the speakers in my bay window. I've tried them in different places in the room, and for the way my room is set up, they sound the best there, and it helps reinforce the bass. And I feel like with my upstairs system, there's no reason to have a subwoofer with the way the speakers are laid out, and it to me sounds really nice laying on my couch listening to the music. And so I'm fine. That kind of explains my setup there, I guess. As you know, I have fairly low wattage amplifiers, so speaker efficiency is important. I know people bash clips for saying that these aren't as efficient as they claim they are. I have no idea. I know these and this are similar. These are a little more efficient. I think these are rated at 89 dB a watt, so these are probably closer to 91, something like that, which, either one of these is going to work with like a 300B amp, or even the EL34 amp can drive either one of these. So the 300B has a little easier time with these than the EL34 does, but I don't listen at super loud volume levels, so either one of these work good. This is obviously a little smaller speaker. It does not have the bass response that this speaker does. Don't know, some of it may be to do with the smaller port, but I think most of it has to do with the size of the driver that this uses, because this speaker has about the same size bass port as this one does when I'm just like sticking my finger in here. Actually, this one feels like it's slightly bigger than this one is, but this speaker's got fantastic bass. So the port's not the problem, and I feel like it's probably mainly the cabinet size and also the driver size. So let's start out with the GR Desktop Mini. Guys, I just was not impressed. It's a very dull sounding speaker. It's obviously going to suffer on the low end because it's got such a small, woofer driver, and I wasn't expecting a lot there, but I was expecting the mid-range and especially the tweeter, the higher end, to be nice and crisp and sound clean, and it just doesn't. And I don't know if it's a case that in search of trying to get a perfectly flat measured frequency response that it killed the life of the speaker with the crossover, or if the sealed cabinet is just giving it a really muffled kind of a sound. But for costing more than this clip speaker does, this little clips far outperforms it. I mean, it's not even close. The other thing is, this is a very inefficient speaker. My EL34 amp cannot drive it. Wide open, it doesn't have enough power to get listenable sound pressure levels out of it. And I was hoping to use it with my 6BM8 amp, and it's not even close to being able to drive this speaker. And so I was just really disappointed. I mean, I put a lot of work into building this thing, and then for it to perform as poorly as it has, again, was just a disappointment. And I'm not sure if there's some different drivers that I could put in this amp, or maybe, learn more about crossovers. That's not something I've really done a lot of work with. And I've said this before on my channel. I don't know anything about speaker design, and don't claim to. I mean, I enjoyed building these little DIY kits, but any attempts I've ever had in the past of like just building a box and putting a speaker in it have come out sounding bad. And so without knowing more about that and without doing more study and research, I'm very hesitant to like go down that path, at least right now. I'm still figuring out the tube amp thing, and so I'm going to leave it to other people to design speakers, at least for now. But if anybody has figured out a trick to making these little desktop minis sound good, put it in the comments, because I'd be willing to do some modifications to it to try to bring it to life. These are typical of the low budget clip speakers. They got very good mid-range and top end. A lot of people want to say that these are horn speakers. While these may look like horns, they're not. They're a waveguide for the tweeter, and they may kind of help widen the angle that the tweeters work at. I think that's their goal. It's not like a horn performs, like, because I've got some Clips chorus speakers that obviously I can't put on this table that are, horn loaded with a, woofer and totally different sounding speaker. But back to these work great with small amplifiers. They're very efficient. These really work well when you match them with a small powered sub. I've got like a 10-inch, $100, adjustable, high-level in powered sub that I use with these two speakers, with my 6BM8 downstairs for my kind of alternate room listening, casual listening space, and using a little topping DAC, and really, really good sounding setup. Doesn't need many watts of power to drive them, and again, they're super cheap. They just don't have a lot of bass. So you need something to kind of fill in the bottom end that these don't have. So let's talk about these two speakers. We built this on the channel, and I decided to go with this kind of funky teal green, and I think it turned out really cool. I mean, I really like the way these speakers look. They're pretty unique. And as you can see, they're kind of floating around. They're sitting on some IsoAcoustics pucks. Really does help the bass response. I got them under my Clips RP600Ms too. But any questions about their usefulness? They work. Especially if you have the speakers sitting on the same like board or surface or floor that they can resonate between the two speakers. They definitely help the bass response. But anyway, back to these speakers. The soft dome tweeter has got a, hate to use the word soft again, but they've got a little softer high end than the Clipses do, which for certain kinds of music is nice, especially if you got some soprano type, female vocals that are getting up into higher registries, these can almost get sounding shrill, where the soft dome tweeter kind of tames that. Like I said, these have a really good bass response, almost verging on too much. There could be such a thing for a bookshelf speaker, but they're really good sounding speakers, and they're $250 for the kit. And to me, that's kind of what DIY is supposed to be about. And where, like, this little guy misses the mark, it ends up costing more money for the kit than a pre-built Klipsch does, and it doesn't sound better or even as good. Where this speaker, in a certain way, sounds better than these do. Now, the Klipsch RP600Ms, and I think 160Ms are the same speakers that they designed more for home theater kind of use, but they got like a different bass on them or something. But it's basically the same speaker. When you look at the crossover, it's got both numbers on it. So I'm sure they're, identical speakers other than the little foot that they sit on. These are good sounding speakers, and they're real lively, they're spunky, they're fun to listen to, they're great with jazz music. I mean, if you got saxophones, trumpets, horns, and again, this isn't a horn, it's a waveguide on a tweeter, but it really does bring out the realism in those kinds of instruments. So, we did do a capacitor upgrade on this speaker a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to give it some time to settle in. And at first it did sound a little flatter, but then once the capacitor broke in and everything settled down, I'm not sure I like it, being honest. I think it's made it a little too kind of shrill sounding. It can definitely get fatiguing to listen to now. And I think the cap that it came with kind of mellowed out the high end a little bit. And unfortunately, I think I just tossed the capacitors that came in this thing because I'm thinking, oh, this has got to be an upgrade. And so I may just put some orange drops in it, or put in the comments below what you think I should try in these speakers to kind of calm down the top end. I'm willing to experiment with stuff and report back on what I find, but I find I'm listening to these more now than I used to, and I think I almost preferred these before. And so I'm not going to say I ruin these speakers, but they're not as enjoyable to listen to with certain content. I have been listening to more soprano female vocal kind of stuff lately, and so these speakers may just suit that kind of content better. But anyway, I want to be honest about this. Like I said, I don't think I, effed up these speakers, but I don't think I did them any favors. And so, not sure, should I go back and take down that video? Or, it did show how to go in and do the work, but maybe I just need to do an updated video once I figure out what works better, and then we can take that one down. So let me know what you think about what I should do about the video on this speaker, and then some suggestions on what capacitor I should try in here to get it back closer to what it was, and maybe even tone down a little bit from the way Klipsch set them up without ruining their efficiency. I've seen people that do crossover mods to these. I think Danny did, and my concern is that it's going to make them inefficient, because I think he added a lot of resistance inside them. And honestly, after listening to these, I don't want to make this speaker sound similar to this one, because I don't like this at all. And I really do like the way these sound. They still sound good on everything except for, music that's got a lot of really top-end, heavy kind of stuff. And again, it may just be that, my setup's different. I've got a new turntable now, and maybe that's bringing out some of it too. So I can't swear that it was the capacitor change that did that to these speakers. So I need to be honest about that. So anyway, I did order the three-way version of the speaker that has a ribbon tweeter and a small mid-range and a woofer. I was so impressed with the way these little two-ways came out, and I've had a couple of people tell me that, like, I'm a ribbon speaker guy or whatever. And so I want to hear what a ribbon tweeter sounds like. And I thought, given that the two-way ones perform so well, I can't help but think that their three-way is going to sound good too. So we're going to be building some of those in the future. I've got another set of DIY speakers that I think I got from Parts Express that I haven't built yet, that has two drivers and a tweeter. It's still a two-way speaker, but it's got two woofers. And I think they're a little smaller than these, but that's another kit that I need to work on. And kind of, I don't know, I want to dive into some speaker stuff more, because it is fun having some different speakers that I can just pop up on the shelf and listen to and compare. And some days maybe I'm just in a mood for a little different thing. And I'm starting to find the same thing's true with phono cartridges, that certain cartridges have kind of a certain sound. And if I'm listening to a music, it's kind of like tube rolling. I've got tubes that I know that sound a certain way, that it would be nice to be able to have some different speakers to play with too, without breaking the bank, buying some high-end stuff. I did try some triangle speakers because I'd heard good things about them, and I was going to actually replace these speakers in my downstairs system with them. And they were about the size of this speaker. I can't remember what the model number is. Sorry, guys. But, they were, the same price point and size as these RP600Ms in the triangle line in two-way speakers. And I just didn't like the way they sounded either. It had front-facing bass ports, which I thought would work good in my downstairs, and it didn't really have any more bass than these little tiny guys did. And like I said, they were pretty expensive. And then when I took all these speakers upstairs and tried them in my, upstairs location, these clearly sounded so much better to me than those triangle speakers. I just returned them, which is joy of Amazon. So anyway, I'm going to put some links below to some of this stuff, especially these kits. If you've never done any DIY speakers, build a pair of these. If you got any kind of woodworking skills, they're not hard to build. There's a lot of enjoyment that comes out of listening to something that you built from scratch, or kind of from scratch. And yeah, I think that, it's another way of getting into DIY audio that's really fun. So anyway, I've talked about doing a speaker roundup, and here we are. Hope you've enjoyed this. Hope this has been informative. Maybe giving you some ways to lean on trying some stuff. I haven't listened to the RP600M2s. I've heard they were really nice sounding. I almost pulled the trigger on a pair of them when they had them on sale for, I think, $420 for a pair, but the sale lasted like 12 hours. And by the time I made up my mind and went to go buy, the sale was over and they were back at $650. And it's like, nah, I don't want them that bad. So anyway, again, hope you're enjoying this content. If you are, please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. Thank you, Patreon folks, and also you folks that make donations to the channel. Helps me be able to afford stuff like these speakers and stuff to build and projects to bring content to you guys. And until the next video, have a nice day.